It was a cold and rainy evening in the small town where Jesse had lived most of his life. The station, a hub of travelers, was filled with the usual hustle and bustle. She was different from the other women he had seen, different from the women he was used to, thin, pretty, or delicate. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but Jesse saw something in her eyes, something that spoke to him in ways he couldn't explain. The air inside was filled with the scent of fresh bread, coffee, and the quiet hum of life. Her past was full of rejection and ridicule. Jesse could see the vulnerability in her eyes, and it struck him deeply. She wasn't just a woman in need of help. He realized that he had been living in the shadows of his own regrets, too afraid to let anyone in. Jesse, the rugged cowboy, had found his heart again, and in the quiet moments they shared, their love grew stronger, not because of what they had, but because of what they gave each other, the gift of acceptance, kindness, and the promise of a new beginning. But with Emma, he didn't need to be afraid. She was the missing piece to his life, a life that had been defined by loneliness and work. Together, they created something new. They weren't just two people living in a cabin. They were partners, building something real, something lasting. She was someone who had carried a weight on her shoulders for far too long, a weight that no one had ever tried to help her lift. But Jesse never looked at her with judgment. To him, she wasn't a burden. She wasn't defined by her outward appearance. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," he said softly. She smiled, her eyes filled with love. "I never thought I'd find someone like you either," she replied. And in that moment, they both knew they had found something that would last forever. She was simply Emma, a woman who had lived through things he could never understand. Jesse had learned her name, had settled in. She wasn't just a stranger to him anymore. She became a part of his daily routine, someone he began to care about in a way that went beyond mere necessity. She was alone, like him, and that connection was enough to make him walk toward her. Her life had been one of solitude, punctuated by moments of cruel rejection. She had grown to believe that love wasn't for someone like her, someone who didn't fit into the mold society had created. But here, in this cabin, she felt something she hadn't in years: acceptance. There was something raw about the way she looked at the fire, something that spoke of her hidden pain. Without thinking, he reached out, placing a hand on hers. Emma turned to him, her face softening in the dim light of the fire. She had never known kindness like this before. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, and Jesse could feel a wave of unspoken understanding pass between them. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. The words tumbled out before he could stop them, but it didn't matter. There was no hesitation in his heart. But something about her expression, the sadness, the vulnerability, made Jesse take her hand without waiting for a reply. Jesse, a rugged cowboy, stood at the edge of the platform, his worn boots soaked from the rain. His face, weathered by years of working on the ranch, was lost in thought. He had always been a solitary man, focused on survival rather than living. Yet there was something missing, something he couldn't shake off, a void that no amount of hard work could fill. As the train approached with a low rumble, Jesse's eyes fell upon a figure sitting alone on the bench. He stood before her, taking a deep breath as he looked down into her eyes. There was a sudden gust of wind, the rain beating against their faces as if trying to hold them back. But Jesse was resolute. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of purpose. It wasn't about rescuing her or pitying her. It was about the possibility of something different, something that could change them both. Days passed since that fateful encounter, and Jesse's small cabin began to feel different. At first, Emma was hesitant, unsure of her place in this world Jesse had brought her into. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Jesse watched her as she stared into the flames. "I've never had anyone be kind to me like this," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Over the weeks that followed, Emma began to open up, revealing bits and pieces of her past. Jesse, too, began to feel the change. The walls he had built around his heart slowly began to crumble. As the seasons changed, so did their bond. What started as an unexpected meeting became a love that neither of them had expected. The sun set one evening, casting a warm glow over the fields, and Jesse took Emma's hand once again.